Hey everyone, we're back for another vintage challenge this week. This is the last weekend before Tournament Weekend, so I figured it would be a good idea to play the vintage challenge, kind of prepare for this event. And I'm not going to do a deck tech this week because I'm playing the exact same deck I did before in terms of the main deck. I didn't do great in the challenge, but I still felt good about the deck, and that's an important, different, something to observe. Not sure the word I'm thinking of here, but you obviously can't win every tournament, but sometimes you get vintage, sometimes magic happens, sometimes you don't play great, and all those happened in the last tournament. So the main change I made is I'm not really sold on Tormod's Crypt. I just hardly ever think you beat Dredge by playing three Tormod's Crypts, and with the current build of Dredge, I'd much rather just kind of focus on trying to win the game since they have so much pieces of interaction, and you can't really afford to dilute your deck much. So I'm not going to really be boarding in many cards for Dredge, no Tormod's Crypts or anything. Yexla Jailer is a card I would consider trying. They don't really have a lot of answers to that card, but yeah. Changes I did make where I cut the 3 Tormod script for a Mind's Desire. Seems kind of funny to play this card in the sideboard, but I figured it would be pretty good against the Xerox strategies, the blue control decks. It's kind of just another business spell. I felt like I was a little light on business, and having one more powerful business spell at the top end seemed good to me. Toxic Deluge, people like to play random creature decks in this format, and I figured just having a way to clean up the Thalias and what have you, it would be nice. It sucks to pay life. There's a few options this slot, and I kind of decided Toxic Deluge is the worst because it's the most consistent despite having to pay life. And then Sadistic Sacrament's kind of a funny card that basically lets you search your opponent's library for 3 cards and exile them. And what this is really good for is just the Stormir Tendrils of Agony decks because they oftentimes don't have very many win conditions. So it's nice to have you have 4 dark conditions. It's nice to have a dark condition line that just goes and finds a way to win the game rather than putting a Necropotence in play, which can be kind of slow. So yeah, we're going to be playing the Vintage Challenge. Looks like it's starting in about 20 seconds, so we'll get right into it. 59 players today, so a bit of a smaller event. There's an SCG today and stuff, so and a Grand Prix, so up to 60. This person won with Oko Oath recently. Still some really good players in here, though. Legacy World Champion, Condescend, who is former professional Magic player, I guess I should say, but mostly plays a lot of Moto now. So a friend of mine, really good Magic player. My friend Eric. Echo Baronin. Option Paralysis. This hand. I like this hand. So I think it's actually reasonably important enough to us that our Soul Ring resolves. And so we don't want to brainstorm on turn 1. So what we could do is we could go turn 1 Mox Jet Duress You, and then turn 2 Soul Ring Brainstorm. And I think that's a good option. Now, if our Mox Jet doesn't resolve, we're likely not going to win the game. But I usually don't put my opponent on Force of Will Mox Jet, especially if we don't lead on Tolarian Academy. So if I play the Tolarian Academy first, there's a higher chance my opponent will Force of Will Mox Jet or Force of Negation or something, and I really don't want this card to be countered. I think it's probably the most important card to resolve in my hand currently. This hand's a little clunky, but Brainstorm's a really powerful Magic card, so we're going to lead on Mox Jet and Duress. Alright, so we are playing against a blue deck. I'll take their Force of Negation. I generally, with my discard spells, like to take people's counter spells. I can also just play the Soul Ring now. Was a better way to think about what I just explained. I get to do both this turn. Most of those things I don't want to brainstorm on turn 1, so I think you can't really afford to take your opponent's business spells just because that's not really the axis you're fighting on, because you care about a finite number of cards in their deck, and it sucks that Ancestral and stuff draw them more cards, but those cards are not all going to guaranteed be Force of Negations or Force of Wills, and this is a guaranteed Force of Negation or Force of Will. So sometimes I see people kind of make the mid-range approach of, duressing your opponent's counter spells, or not their non-counter spells, and I just don't really agree with that. So we're going to play this, and then we're going to throw out a Brainstorm and hope that it finds us some good cards. There's a Time Twister, so that's pretty good. Yep. So I'm going to put back the Tendrils of Agony and the Mox Pearl. And then here we're going to Preordain, because if this gets countered, we don't want to redraw either of those cards. And this gives us the option to find a Cabal Ritual and just go for something else here. So let's see how much mana we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 7. So if Dark Petition gets countered, we can't Time Twister. But I don't think my opponent has a Power Blast because they have a Mox Ruby in their hand and they didn't play it out. So worst case scenario would be our opponent counters this, plays Narset, and we lose. The other option is we hold this, we just cast Time Twister this turn, force them to use their counterspell, and then we have Dark Petition next turn, which plays better around Pyroblast and Narset. And I think I like that play more. So I'm going to cast Time Twister here. Alright, it resolved. That's pretty good for us. So now we have 1, 2. So our opponent could have drawn a counterspell. We did let our opponent draw 7 cards here. So, including the Force Negation back in their deck. So we have 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 mana. So I think we might as well lead on a Preordain here. I'm just going to fetch an Underground Sea because if our opponent wastelands us, they're not going to... We have multiple black sources. We have a Jet, another land, a Lotus. If our opponent wastelands us, they're not going to wasteland our Preordain when Tolarian Academy is in play with 3 artifacts. Alright, there's Duress, exactly what I was looking for. So we'll top the Ponder, I suppose. So 1, 2, 3. We'll put the Wanderer on top. And then we're going to lead with the Duress here. Okay, they didn't find a counterspell. That's good. Well, we'll take Narset. I think we might be able to win the game now with just Yawgmoth's Will. Usually if you have Lotus plus Yawgmoth's Will, you're able to win. So here, we're going to cast Dark Ritual. And now we have to think. So I have 7 mana, so Dark Petition for Yawgmoth's Will puts me down to 2. Then up to 4, up to 7. And then Tutor for Tendrils of Agony would work. Oh, or we can just Tutor for Tendrils of Agony right now. I kind of forgot that we cast Time Twister this turn, so we already have enough Storm to do the Tendrils of Agony thing. And our opponent is at 20, so it's just kind of a nice, clean Tendrils kill. 1 mana floating, and the right number of Storm, exactly. That's something I kind of struggle with in Moto, because I oftentimes ignore this number until it's relevant, whereas in paper, I'm writing it down with every spell. So, yeah, so what I like to take out against the blue decks is Time Twister. It's just so bad against Narset and Power Blast. Same with Tinker. Citadel's awful against Dack, Shatter, all that same kind of stuff. Hurkyl's Recall, we don't really care about the artifacts we're going to be bouncing. I like to take out both Vampire Tutor and Mystical Tutor. They're awkward against our opponent having counterspells. Like, it's just so bad because they are card disadvantage. You cast one of these cards and you're going down a card in your hand because you're not tutoring for a card to your hand, you're tutoring it to the top of your deck. And then Lotus Petal and Mind's Sediment. They're just not really where you want to be. You want kind of good, consistent mana sources where you just keep jamming threats into your opponent. And you don't really want to be drawing cards that are mostly just blanks. Mana is so rarely the bottleneck in this matchup. It's more about finding enough action. So you're kind of replacing these with lands, basically. So I'll go over what I said where it in. So 3 Power Blasts and Empty the Warrens. This kind of gives you another way to go through their counterspells, like the Soft Permission thing. It can attack down Narset, it can attack down Dack if that comes up, block Dreadhorde Arcanist and the like. And mostly, it's just a really hard card for them to interact with unless they have Mindbreak Trap or Flusterstorm. And then for that same reason, bringing in Mind's Desire, a little awkward to board out multiple zeros and board a Mind's Desire, but I still do think you have the right number of cards. Leaving in 1 Chain of Vapor for something like Stony Silence, but not bringing in the second. And then I like to bring in the 2 lands, kind of replacing the petals for them for more consistent mana sources, as well as a defense grid to kind of fight through all their counterspells. So this is how I end up sideboarding against Xerox, really. You're kind of just making your deck a little slower and a little bit more resilient, whereas maybe less consistent, because you do have less payoffs, but, you're able to fight through 1 or 2 pieces of interaction quite a bit better. Whereas in game 1, since there's decks that don't play any counterspells, you just want as many speed cards kind of as possible, and then adjust in the post-board games. I really like this game. It could be awkward against our opponent's really strong, like Lotus Narset draws or whatever, but having both Library of Alexandria, Tolarian Academy, and Mind's Desire is a pretty powerful late game option that if we can get to turn 3 or 4, we'll almost certainly win there. So, and the Xerox decks oftentimes do keep hands that don't interact super favorably. Alright, they have turn 1, Ancestral. Let's see if they're following up with anything else broken. Nope, just that. Well, just that, turn 1 Ancestral Mox is still a very good hand. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and pass here. This sucks against Lavinia, but, our deck kind of just sucks against Lavinia. And I'd just rather leave... I could draw a card here now and play Mana Crypt, but I want the Mana Crypt for Mind's Desire. Alright, well, we're gonna... Oh, I can still draw a card on their end step. So when you're on the draw, an Narset's not as big of a deal as when you're on the play, but it's still a really good card against us. We do have 4 Power Blast, or 3 Power Blast now to interact with it. I decided 4 was too many because it's really nice to draw 1, and you do have a lot of card draw spells and stuff to find it, but I found that drawing multiple Power Blasts is pretty awkward in this deck. So they put Forcible in their hand. Well, now we know they have that. Yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about. That's bad for us. If they go like turn 1 Ancestral, turn 2 Narset, the library hand is not looking as impressive, but it's still going to draw some million cards this game, and hopefully at some point cast a Mind's Desire. Alright, so we have 9 cards in hand here, so I think that it's fine to play Volcanic Island and play Ponder, since we're going to have to discard it anyways, and just set up our draws. We'll discard something. Maybe it's better to discard a land, but... Alright. I think I like Demonic Tutor a reasonable amount. The extra land's not great, but that's okay. We can Demonic Tutor for something like Defense Grid, and that could be what we're going to do this game. There's a few cards you can Demonic Tutor. It's kind of hard in Vintage. You have so many options every turn that I'm never sure exactly what you're supposed to Demonic Tutor for. It can oftentimes be a difficult decision. Yep. Oh, jeez. Yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about, where our hand lines up poorly against their very best hand, and this was basically their very best hand, so... Because now they're going to go Dread Horde, get Ancestral Recall, play another Narset. You know. The thing about the Vintage decks is they're really not that slow anymore. Narset and Dread Horde Arcanist just changed the equation so much that it's much less so a control deck and more of a combo deck, where the combo is just assembling 7 cards in hand for the entire game. Which, you know, most decks can't be because they just have a million counter spells. Like, here my opponent's going to go up to 10 cards in hand on turn 4. Like, drawn 6 cards, impulse twice, have a one-sided, whatever the sub-effect card. I forget what the first card that was like that, which is fine. I mean, it's good that every deck's powerful, even the fair blue decks, but I do think this is the best deck by a wide margin. But I think our deck is fine, too. The Young Pyromancer. So unfortunately here they do have Force of Will. Then they might tap out for Narset here, and then I'm going to try and go for a win, I think. They didn't. That's less good for us. We'd really prefer them to tap out. Bottom. They might have Power Blast. So I have to think about exactly how I want to sequence this turn. I know every card I'm going to have in my hand next turn. So, the Young Cabal Ritual is interesting, because I know they have Force of Will. They know that I know that they have Force of Will. They did reveal it to Narset, so we both know that that is a card they have in their hand. So, they have to ask themselves, why is my opponent leading Cabal Ritual when they don't already have a Black Source in play? And that would probably be because that's my bottleneck. Maybe I'm going to go Cabal Ritual, Duress you, and they're worried about that. So if I go ahead and fetch an Underground Sea here, cast Demonic Tutor, it gets countered. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can still cast Mind's Desire. I think that's a reasonable play to make. I think we just get Lotus here. Oh, why'd I play a land first? Oh, I keep forgetting that the Tolarian Academy is not a spell. Okay, well now I should have to pass. That was a little loose, but now I wish I would have gotten a discard spell of some sort, but that's okay. Now I could have had Library again. That was definitely a brain fart. I sometimes forget Tolarian Academy is not a spell, but Early in the morning, first league. I'm sure people watching at home are like, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing? You were just talking about how good Clarion Academy is here." I feel pretty silly now, but that's okay. All right. Well, now they're gonna know that my bottleneck is the Mind's Desire because they get to cast this. So we're just so incredibly unlikely to win this game, but really punted there because having an extra card off library would have been so nice. Then being able to tutor for a different card like a Duress even would have been really nice too because this Lotus doesn't actually really do anything. It helps us pay for Flusterstorm, so we're basically putting our opponent on needing to have Mindbreak Trap here in order to favorably interact with us, or like 4 counter spells. So we're doing okay at this point. Never mind. We lose. Okay, well, I would have lost either way there. So I'm still fine with how I sideboarded. I think Toxic Deluge is like an interesting card that I think is not really where you want to be in this matchup, because by the time they've assembled many creatures, that usually means it's because they have like a Lavinia, a Young Pyromancer, and a Dreadhorde, like we saw that game, and that means their hand is full of counter spells, and you don't really want to pay a million life just to get it countered. It's like it's not really worth it. You want to win the game in a position before they get there. I have found this matchup to get quite a bit harder, and I still think Library's strong in the matchup, but it has looked silly the last few times I've played it. But I think the thing is I think it's better than a dual land would be in that slot, and I do like going up to 15 lands post board and playing 13 total. I think Library of Alexandria could be a Karakas, and that's a reasonable inclusion to the deck. If you really are not sold on your opponent, I'm playing Library of Alexandria. I really like Library of Alexandria. I think it's just a broken Magic card, and you should play it. But that might just be me being emotionally attached to a powerful Magic card that's not very well positioned at the moment. So something to think about. I would like to play first. Yep, good hand. I'm not going to cast my Ancestral on turn 1. I will Ponder, though. Misstep's not in the format, but I still don't want to get Force of Will. Alright. Can Duress on turn 2, plus Ancestral. Shuffle away my top card that I don't really want. Brainstorm can still be in my hand. Worst case scenario, they go like Lotus and Narset, and then we probably just lose, but you can't play around your opponent's Lotus draws with this deck. I mean, there's nothing we could have done to play around it. We're going to keep Hands with Ancestral Recall against a control deck. Please, Young Pyromancer, not Dreadhorde. Okay. This one's much more beatable for us. So I'm going to lead on Duress here, with the reason being that Narset is such a problem next turn that I can't afford to play. Like in the past, I would have tapped out for Defense Grid. But now it's like if I tap out for Defense Grid, I untap with Ancestral and Brainstorm in my hand, and they play a Narset, and it's like after they play a Narset, it's like, oh, okay, that sucked. Or they shatter my Defense Grid, and then it's in the same position. Alright, they have Narset Force. Well, I'm going to take Narset since I have Defense Grid. Now the question is, do I want to cast Ancestral? They're going to Force Pitch Time Walk, probably. I think not. I think my plan here is to end a turn Brainstorm. But if I'm going to end a turn Brainstorm, I should just do it now. I'm going to get another Underground Sea here despite having Power Blast in my deck. The reason being I don't really want to get wasted off black. Alright, we'll put the Tendrils last. They can't Jace plus us next turn. But I suppose if they were going to Surgical Extraction a random card out of our deck, if they make us shuffle our cards, Preordain is likely the worst card in our hand, so we'll put that on top. Just a thing to think about. Sometimes people do kind of wacky stuff. So I think they're not that likely to walk this turn. I think they want to get the Dreadhorde in play and, have a turn where they can go like walk, Dreadhorde, spell. Or Jewel Land. They're just going to time walk. Okay. I find this to be a pretty interesting decision because they're not really getting a lot of leverage out of this time walk turn, and that's also a blue card for Forcible, but they do attack for some damage and everything. I'm not saying interesting isn't bad. I haven't really played the Xerox deck. I think it just actually is an interesting decision that I'm not sure what the right play was, so I think my opponent's play is pretty reasonable. Hopefully I didn't draw another Narset or something here. Although we're more okay with them drawing Narset now because we have a pretty strong hand. Yep, it's a card we knew about. So their hand's down to 2 Force of Wills. Force Pitch Dig. So their last card in hand's Force of Will at this point. So we're taking kind of a lot of damage here, especially if they draw a spell. We could get in a rough spot. Here I like getting Volcanic Island, and I'm going to cast Ancestral Recall, target myself. Hope to draw Black Lotus. I did not. Let's just pass here. I guess that's bad against an Narset. Okay, now they can cast Force of Will, but we're not that concerned about that. So I think we do win on this next turn. In fact, I'm positive that we do. Kind of showing why I like Pyroblast. It's a versatile card. We can just lead on Walk here. If they Pyroblast, we don't care. We'll take the Dark Petition. We don't need the Duress because we do have the Pyroblast. And the same card here, basically. As we know our opponent's hand. Go to my turn. I should actually probably throw the Upkeep Swap back on. So now we're just going through the motions. I think we're going to try to win with the Yawgmoth's Kill. Yawgmoth's Will Kill or something. Dark Ritual. We should make sure not to screw up here, as I've done many times playing Vintage Storm, because I play a little bit too fast, because I go off Legacy muscle memory, since I've played so much Legacy Storm, and the mana lines and everything are just different. They're play similar cards, but the decks are different, obviously, so. My opponent's thinking if this is the bottleneck, which I think is a pretty reasonable thing to think about. Unfortunate for them is the thing is that the bottleneck is, there's not a bottleneck for me on this turn, so sometimes you play against Storm, you have to really think about what's the way that I can use Force of Will to possibly win this game? And this is not one of those times, since it's just not going to matter that I use it. But it's okay. It's good to think about still. In this scenario, since I'm casting a Dark Ritual, I don't think this is the spot where you Force of Will, because it's more likely, if I was casting Cabal Ritual, I think that's a more reasonable Force of Will target. The thing is here, is that if I had a discard spell, I would have just cast it already. And there's more mana in Vintage, so it's reasonably likely that I have more mana. And so often my bottleneck will be my ability to interact with your second Force of Will. So if I were my opponent here, I would not get fight over this, and I would hope that, but then there's the argument, if you counter this, you put 6 power in play, you kill me next turn. So maybe you just need the 1 turn to live. So then that would make it a reasonable choice to counterspell. Here we can go get Lotus. Cast said Lotus. Cast this, get Tendrils of Agony. Cast said Tendrils of Agony. Cool. Starting off 1-0. 61 players today, so it should be 6 rounds. And I will see you all back for round 2.